YouTube, what's good? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're talking about my recent photography work over the last, let's say, month or so, 4 to 5 weeks. I've done a lot of different things. I've been shooting a ton of street portraits. As I mentioned, I was taking a class at ICP. So I was out every single week doing street portraiture for the class. I also shot a music video, which we'll talk about a bit, and I got some new gear as well that I want to show off. All right, so let's dive into the photography. Real quick, let's look at a couple of my favorite shots from my recent last couple weeks. I feel like I found a nice groove with my photography at this point. For street portraiture, I've got my cadence down. I've got what I like to say to people when I approach them. I just feel generally very comfortable. The gear that I'm using works perfectly. And of course, I'm shooting on the Hasselblad 500C a lot with the 80mm Zeiss lens. I got some macro tubes, which we'll talk about in a second. And I've also been shooting a bit more with this camera, the Canon P with a 35mm f2 lens. I don't want to only use the Hasselblad because I don't want it to become a crutch, something that I rely on exclusively for my street portraiture. With this camera right here, not only do I get to kind of diversify the look of my images, but also I get a lot more photos on film with this, 36 shots as opposed to the 12 on the Hasselblad. So very happy to start using that and to start to kind of mix and match what I do. This is also a good backup camera in case the Hasselblad decides to crap out, which a couple times random things have happened where Hasselblad just kind of locks and I have no idea what to do. Then I got to put the dark slide in, do all this stuff, take the back off. It's nice to just have this as a quick backup where I don't have to really worry about anything at all. So the photos that you just looked at, I think I've got a couple favorites here. I think my absolute favorites are actually the most recent photos that I've taken and actually using the macro adapters for the Hasselblad Zeiss lenses. And these are the two photos that you see right here. I basically just screwed on the macro adapter on the front, and I really think these photos worked very well because each subject was doing something for the portrait that actually kind of took advantage of the macro lens. So in here you see he's got the rose up to his nose, and I think that was a perfect excuse to get up in there close. And the fact that I've got one eye looking right at the camera and then the rose kind of taking up a lot of space, it's a very intriguing portrait. And I just love kind of this intrigue that it makes. It makes you wonder, who is this guy? Why does he have a single rose? It's just a really cool portrait. And for the little kid, I think getting up close was absolutely perfect because it allowed me to capture some extra details that really kind of own in on the fact that he's very young and innocent. First of all, I love his little hand pointing at me like that. I think it's a really cool gesture, especially for a portrait. It's like, who is this kid? Why is he so cool? And then of course you see kind of the dry snot, whatever you want to call that, under his nose. This is a kid. He's probably, 3-4 years old, and he's just running around dancing in the park, having a good time. So even though this kid has like a very kind of mature pose, he's pointing at the camera, he's looking very with a lot of authority, he still has these dry boogers, which makes you remember that he's a kid after all. It's just a really interesting contrast. But I really love that portrait, and I'm very happy that the kid's mom gave me permission to photograph the kid. I plan on taking a lot more portraits and to continue doing this all summer. I want to get all over New York City, go to a bunch of different neighborhoods, and actually shoot a lot more in my home neighborhood of Washington Heights up in the north of Manhattan. I don't live there right now, I live in Brooklyn, so I don't spend too much time there, but I want to get into the rhythm of going there and actually creating some work there because I know the area well, but I basically have never done any photography there, which is kind of sad if you think about it. So that's one of my goals for this summer, and I'm putting it out here so that perhaps you can hold me accountable. I got into darkroom recently as well, actually today, earlier before making this video, and I printed a bunch of these images and I had a fantastic time doing so. It's been a while since I got into darkroom, so I was very happy to go there and actually create some of these images and see them in person, in the flesh, as they say, on paper. So here are my darkroom prints right here. You've already seen this image in the previous video, but I just had to show it off because I absolutely love how the print turned out. Funky colors from the underexposed XR, but I'm cool with that. This is the image right here of the kid, and I really love this image. I wish I could bring out a little bit more of the red in his face. I tried to add magenta, and I'm happy what I got here, but I think there's still maybe a little bit more room for improvement. But I'm still satisfied with this, and I can't spend all day because the darkroom ain't cheap. This image right here of the Super in Williamsburg here of the building, really cool guy, and I love how this turned out again. Just a really soft portrait, really soft lighting because it was overcast that day, and there's nothing else I could say about this. This came out exactly like I hoped for, and I think it's a beautiful portrait of this guy. And then finally we've got here the dude smelling the rose. This guy was just walking through the park with his friend, and each one of them had one rose in their hand. I was confused by that. Not confused, but it caught my attention because usually people have more than one flower, but they just had just one. So I went up to them, asked them what the deal was. They said that their friend had given each one of them a rose, and that's cool. But either way, I needed to get a photo of them. So I asked this guy to smell it and look at me. And then with the macro adapter on the Hasselblad, I got in real close and I was able to create this image. And this is the power of the macro adapter, which we'll talk about in a bit. You can get it nice and tight. And this isn't even as close as you can get, believe it or not. You can get in way closer. But yeah, I'm really happy with these prints, and I'm just so happy that I got back into the darkroom. I haven't had a lot of time recently because I've been taking that class at ICP, but now I've got a lot more time because the class is over, and I can't wait to continue printing. So I'm very happy with these darkroom images. As you can see here, I did a nice kind of 8x10 size, which isn't giant by any means, but perfect size for a portrait, I think, because you really get to see someone's face relatively at scale, at least with the macro photos. With photos that you move back a bit further, the face is obviously not at scale to a regular human face, but I still think these look pretty cool. And I think this is the perfect size for printing in the darkroom because it's a lot less of a hassle. You guys actually remember this photo. This was from the last video that I did looking at my images. I hadn't printed it yet in the darkroom, so when I got the chance to today, this was the absolute first image that I made, and I love how it looks. The photo's underexposed with Ektar, which really messes with the colors a bit. You can see that in the digital scan here. But it's also very evident in this print right here. And I messed around with a couple different variations of color, but this one is the one that kind of looks the most interesting to me, even though, especially the shadows are a bit funky when it comes to the color. There's also two different color temperatures in this photo because the lights of the subway are one color temperature, and then of course you got daylight streaming in through here as well. So you basically have to pick one or the other. You can't balance both of them at the same time in the photo. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this looks, even though it's kind of an interesting alternative style of color grading, let's say. But yeah, darkroom printing is great. You all got to get in there. I do my darkroom printing at Photolab NYC here in Brooklyn and Bushwick, in the neighborhood that I live in, and I love that darkroom. So I want to talk about the music video that I shot, and I'm only going to bring it up here because I also shot some images, which you can check out right here. These images are basically kind of, just interesting film images that I shot in order to include in the music video as stills. And it's for a rapper here that I got to know in New York City who does really, really great work. And he's a fantastic collaborator as well. So you're gonna see a lot more of him. You've actually seen him before. Check out these images right here. These we shot on the Mamiya RZ67, which, I had an interesting experience with that camera, but I really love the images that I created. So we collaborated again. We shot this music video, which you can check out in the link down below. And yeah, I really love collaborating with this guy, and we made some pretty cool, interesting images. I used the Canon P for the shots in the video. I wanted them to look kind of nice and rough, and I also needed a lot of photos to have a selection I can choose from. So I didn't use the Hasselblad for that at all. And I actually shot with some of the FPP Retrochrome film, which we'll talk about on a different video, but look at some of the images right here. Let's just say I have no idea how to properly kind of expose for this film, or even like how to properly scan it. It is slide film. I developed at E6, so we've got positives, but scanning this film was very challenging, and honestly I didn't put really much mind into it because I wanted a faster turnaround. And the kind of soft, weird coloring look worked great for the music video because it already kind of had a very strong palette. So it's just an interesting look to include in the video without having to really push the image in any direction. But if this was for a kind of serious portraiture, I definitely would have been a bit upset with the results. But again, we'll talk about that in a different video. And last but not least, I want to pull out the Hasselblad, which you've all seen on this channel many times before. And I'm pulling it out to show you the new things that I got. And this is this right here. So in this pouch, I've got two macro filters for the lens. And this basically works in a very simple way. These right here are lens filters that kind of work like any other lens filters that you've seen for any other lens. But these are basically diopters. So they're able to magnify the image that's coming through the camera lens. And that lets you get up close like a magnifying glass. So this is a good way on the Hasselblad to do macro photography on the cheap and very easily. There's extension tubes that are typically how the quote unquote pros do macro photography, but the extension tubes on the Hasselblad have quirks. They can lock up your camera if you don't follow certain steps. So I opted to just entirely forego that and get this. Some people say these aren't ideal because it's extra glass that's being introduced into the creating of the image, and therefore every extra glass you include, theoretically there might be some quality loss or just some artifacts or, you know, whatever, that kind of stuff. I don't really care about that. I don't think that whatever is happening is noticeably problematic. I haven't noticed anything honestly at all. So I'm cool with this. And the other thing is I shoot street portraiture. So fumbling around with an extension tube when switching from macro to regular, that is a lot of work to do on the street in the middle of kind of crowds, you know, on the go. This is so much easier to just kind of screw on the lens very quickly, just one full or one half turn, let's say, and it's on there. So for my workflow, this works perfectly. If I was in the studio only, perhaps the extension tubes, you know, would make more sense, because in the studio you have all the time in the world. These filters right here, there's actually 3 of them that are made as part of the set. I only have 2 of them because the set that I bought only included 2. But there's a 0.5, there's the 1, and then I think the other one is the 2. The 0.5 being the one that lets you get the absolute closest to your subject, and the 2 being kind of the least close to your subject. These can actually be stacked as well to really multiply the effect. I haven't really done that yet, but we'll talk about these more in a different video. But I just want to point out that I bought these and they're a great addition to my toolkit for street portraiture, especially with the Hasselblad, because oftentimes, you know, I'll do the minimum focusing distance on here, which I think is somewhere under 3 feet, maybe 2 and change, which is a beautiful distance. You really get incredible images like that. You know, I think this is kind of the minimum distance, and you've seen this photo before. But when you shoot portraits in the street, you know, you get one photo, you still got the person there, you might as well get multiple photos. And therefore, attaching one of these to your front of your lens is a great way to create a completely different looking image from the ones that you would create without it. So I'm very happy to have these, and future video coming, you use this link here whenever it's available. But that's gonna be where I talk about this a bit more. All right, y'all, that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I like making these videos because people get to learn about what I'm doing with my photography as opposed to just talking about gear reviews and all that stuff. These videos don't get a lot of views, and that's totally fine, but if you watch it, definitely give me a comment down below. Let me know what you think, any thoughts, that kind of thing. And I look forward to reading those comments. All right, y'all, to the next video. I'm out.